Welcome to the Suitcase and the Scribe with award-winning journalist Scott Burnside and former NHL goaltender Mike McKenna, a member of the Nation Network of podcasts and delivered by DoorDash.
Hey everybody, Scott Burnside back for another edition of the Suitcase and the Scribe. Mike McKenna. We've got lots to get to today. We're going to hear from Ryan Miller. I'm so excited. Ryan Miller's going to join us later in the show. Can't wait to catch up with one of the great goaltenders of his generation, any generation, really. So that'll be fun. And we've got some serious stuff to talk about, as it appears that's sort of a weekly thing. I do want to start with this, though. One of my favorite parts of the week, and it has been a hard week on many fronts, seeing pictures of you and finding out that you stood in at the Blues practice. And what's that like? What's that like to strap those pads on and get out there? And did it make you think, well, maybe I still got it?
It was pretty fun, man. Let me put my, I know this is a podcast, but if you can see the visual aspect, I'm putting my backup towel on right now.
Nice.
It was totally last minute. I was actually at the arena that the Blues practice at with my daughter because I was going to coach her 8U team in a tournament. And I get the text at 10:15 in the morning saying, hey, can you practice at 11? And I haven't played goalie in a year and a half in a competitive setting for an NHL team. Like the last time I did this was in Vegas before COVID, when I would occasionally practice with the Golden Knights. Whenever Marc-Andre Fleury needed a day off, I'd come out of the office and put my gear on and go down and play. And, I missed it, Scott. Like I really miss playing goaltender. I don't miss playing. I would never want to play beer league ever.
Right.
But I miss a competitive battle of having NHL quality players, having pro quality players on the ice, and having it mean something.
Yeah.
And it's a practice 3 days in advance of a game for the Blues, but man, it's still the NHL. You're taking things seriously. And I look up and I get on the ice, I go through my stretching routine. At first I realize I'm not as flexible as I used to be, but then I see that the nets are being placed at the blue lines. And I went, oh no, this is not happening. This cannot be the first drill. Sure enough, 2-on-2 in the neutral zone with the nets at the blue lines. Here we go. First shot, Robert Thomas short side, bang, goal. Second shot, Perron to Neal, back to Perron. I go laterally, I make the save, and I think, man, I can still do this. And it was kind of a mixed bag from there. But it was super cool, and I was really thankful to the Blues for giving me that chance. Like I would love to do a lot more of that if possible. It takes strange circumstances for it to happen, but it's a huge part of my life, Scott, and it still is. And it's something that, I smiled for a day and a half after it. It brought me a lot of joy. And my daughter got to come over after her game. Her team who was playing was at the same time as the practice. So I had to relinquish my head coaching duties to my assistant coach, Jim Durbin, who took over, and I got the permission of the kids. And when they finished their game that my daughter Kedlin scored in, they came over to watch the practice, to watch their coach play goalie with their hometown favorite team. And so that was really cool. Yeah, I got to see my kid through the glass again. I hadn't done that in 2.5 years. And that was a really long story, Scott. But you know what? It just,
you know what?
I'm sitting here smiling.
Honestly, it sets up, we're going to talk a little bit about the Chicago situation and the continuing fallout from the sexual assault scandal that continues to plague the Blackhawks and the NHL as a whole. And certainly a week ago, you and I were talking about, Kyle Beach coming out as John Doe, putting a name and a personality and a human face to maybe the worst scandal to rock the NHL ever in 104 years. But so that was a week ago. Since then, and as it should be, there are going to be, this isn't going away. And there are a lot of people who still have to answer. And there are still a lot of questions about what, how do we move forward from this as a game? And certainly how does the league and the Blackhawks, how do they move forward? And one of the main, I think, sort of moments of this past week, there were a couple, and I know I'm curious to see what you have to think about the NHLPA, but certainly Gary Bettman and Bill Daley, the commissioner and deputy commissioner of the NHL, having a Zoom media call, lasted the better part of an hour. I'm not cynical. Honestly, I'm not a cynical guy. I really am glass half full. And I was looking forward to the event because I thought maybe there would be some clarity, and I thought maybe there would be some real things that we could take away from what Bill and Gary had to say about the handling and the response by the NHL to the report that laid bare what had happened to Kyle Beach more than a decade ago. And at the end of it, honestly, I was just I was a bit crushed by it. And I don't think I'm alone in that. And I wonder and you mentioned your daughter, because to me, this is, it's not just about the NHL, right? This is the game of hockey we're talking about. And what do we expect from the game at the highest levels? And do we want our families involved and our kids? And I wonder what you took away from that. I felt there was so much wanting and so many missed opportunities. And I've talked to some people around the NHL who are in a significant position, and they feel likewise. It's almost mind-boggling how the NHL managed to, not sort of rise to the occasion this week. And it reflects, I think, the fact that they failed to rise to the occasion for more than a decade on this.
It just missed the human side.
Yeah.
It's just been approached in such a clinical manner and such lawyer speak of, making sure basically Gary Bettman and company don't want to put the league in a vulnerable position with something they may say, because maybe it comes back to legally haunt you afterwards. Well, I don't know how much more legally or publicly you can be hurt by this. The fact that you had a player who was sexually assaulted by his coach, and it was covered up by an NHL team. How can it get worse? It can't get worse. Like, in this scenario, just step up and be a human. Yeah. When there was a question posed, I believe by Rick Westhead, who's been integral into this investigation and really been a driving force, who, by the way, wasn't called on for a very long time, which was incredibly disappointing. I don't understand how anybody in media thinks that that's a good idea to silence a question from someone, because it's going to get out in today's world. That's not the right play. This isn't 1997 where you can just shoo somebody away and it's not heard about. But regardless of that, the questions posed, like, would you provide support to the teenager in Michigan that was harmed after the fact by Brad Aldridge, after he had already sexually assaulted Kyle Beach, after there'd been incidents at other places, and he was able to become hired in Michigan? And to hear Gary Bettman, lawyer, speak and say, well, we need more facts, circumstances, context. And I'm just sitting here thinking, like, dude, for once, just be a human and say, yeah, we will do everything we possibly can to help. This was a mistake. Things weren't handled properly, and we're going to do everything we can. That would have been all you needed right there. Like, empathy. There's empathy missing in all this, in a human side. And I feel like that's, again, just the legal protection aspect. And the lawsuits are flying already. Like, you're not going to stop those. And it was missing, and I think the responses to questions about the Coyotes and them losing draft picks, and the New Jersey Devils being fined $3 million and losing draft picks over the Ilya Kovalchuk contract, and those being competitive advantage types of things that were punished more heavily than a sexual assault. In what world are we living if that's the case?
Yeah.
And my whole thing with this, Scott, is like, I don't feel like there's a deterrent here. Like, okay, $2 million, shame on you guys. Like, how about 5 first-round draft picks?
Yeah.
Do you think teams are going to have their attention if you're going to lose your next 5 first-round draft picks? Because honestly, man, that's what you can tell, because of the way this was handled. You can tell that there's still a pervasive mindset that hockey comes first, and that's wrong, and that's got to change. And these rules have to have teeth, and they have to have consequences.
Yeah. So we're going to talk some real hockey here, and it's always, to me, these are important. They're so important. These are important topics, and it's important to find the balance of, okay, let's make sure that we are paying the appropriate attention to this, and not going down the rabbit hole on it in terms of what you and I are doing here. But so I do think it's critically important. And I talked to somebody who said, again, it's about the messaging. And do you think that this is a point in the game? And do you think the confidence in Gary Bettman, the leadership of the NHL, the game itself, the brand of the NHL, which has always been so much of what Gary has been about in his long tenure as NHL commissioner, in the brand almost at all costs? Is this a watershed moment here? We see a change at the top at some point. Do you think this accelerates maybe, Gary Bettman's plans to stay on, as commissioner? Do you think there's at the ownership level, of course, are the ultimate arbiters in the role of commissioner at the top. Do you think this changes how they view Gary Bettman and maybe what we see moving forward?
I don't think it does in this aspect that I don't think they're going to fire Gary Bettman, if that's what we're asking. Right. I think that's what it comes down to.
Yeah. And I don't think it's, I totally agree. And I don't even know if that's, I don't think that's the right thing, but
no, but I think what you're looking at here, and like, take what Mark Chipman said in his press conference when he was up there with Kevin Cheveldayoff, who was part of this debacle in Chicago. Yeah. And by the way, credit to them for getting in front of this and doing it the right way when they should have. Not in front. I don't think that this happened in a timely enough manner, but I think that the way that they responded with their press conference and what Cheveldayoff said was very present to this. But I think Mark Chipman's words really, that I am going to use my power to change how this affects the NHL. That's the first time anybody really laid bare what has to happen. Something's got to change.
Yeah.
So I do think that you're at a point now where owners are realizing, like, we got a problem here. And if this festers, if this happens again, we're really in one. Like, it can't keep happening, because now everybody knows it's eyes wide open. So I do think that we are at a reckoning, if you would, a watershed moment. I think this is finally something that's caught everybody's attention. It can't just be swept under as for all intents and purposes, as bad as it was, like, Bill Peters using words to Akim Aliu is not seen in the same light as a sexual assault and a cover-up. Okay. Right. Both terrible incidents, but this is one that just can't happen, and I think that that's going forward should be a difference. And to look at the player side with the NHLPA, Scott, Don Fears saying, I don't remember this. I think if I'd have known, I would have done something. I didn't know the full details, and maybe I was told, I don't recall. And he's calling for an investigation of everything, an independent investigation.
Yeah.
And what are the players doing? The players are going, okay, that sounds good. We'll do the independent investigation. And man, I think there's a fundamental problem with the PA. Like, they've got 32 people on exec board. Okay, like, no, you have 32 player reps. You want to get things done. You want to herd cats. You need 5 or 6 players that are elected by their peers to serve on a board to represent them. Right. And I have experience with that. We did that at the minor league level, at the AHL, at the PHPA, and I understand it's a different scale. But I also know that we did not have 31 players that were willing to do anything to get it done.
Yeah.
You need people that are invested, that know what's going on, that have a background in litigation and negotiations. And you only get that through experience as a professional hockey player. You don't get that through classes in college. And I think that they're just going to do whatever the PA says. That's my gut instinct on this. And I think that they're relying too much on Don Fear. I think they need more leadership from within. I think they need somebody from within to grab the reins here and say, all right, guys, do we want him in or out? Because enough of this beating around the bush. If we're upset with this guy, like, can him. There's other people that can do the job. And if you're not, just run with it. But this independent investigation, drag it out another 6 months, let Cody Beach go through everything all over again. Like, why bother? Like, just somebody has some guts to stand up and make a decision here.
I guess I just don't, and your point about, does this help Kyle Beach? Does it help the next person down the line? I don't know. And because I'm not sure how the investigation, what else will they discover other than what Don Fear has already said happened? They screwed up.
Yeah.
The information came, what was remembered, who should have been alerted, who failed on that side of things. The failings seem to be quite obvious to me. And I think you're right. It's the whole NHLPA thing is an interesting thing. And I was talking to a veteran player not long ago. The players are so young now. You've got a new CBA. The pressure points, and to go to your point about, I think back leading up to the 04-05 lockout, and I think about, some of the veteran players and the prominent players who were front and center every day and trying to hammer out an agreement and stop what would ultimately become a lost season. Daniel Alfredson and a lot of peers of that profile. I don't think I correct me if you think I'm wrong, but I'm not sure there's any kind of solidarity within that group. Players are at different points of their careers, and so their concerns are different. And a lot of it is, well, how does this affect me and my next contract, and what happens to me as I move forward. And again, if you're a veteran player or a rookie, I'm not, this is not being ageist, and it's not being an old man shaking his fist at the cloud, but honestly, I think there's a lot, because the league is so young now. I think there are a lot of players who do not care outright, or lack the wherewithal to know what to do to have their voice heard, and to come forward and say, like, what are we doing here? And let's not waste any more time about a situation that is as critical as this.
I think it leads to a whole lot of ambivalence. Like, I think, and by the way, where are the superstars in all this? I got to get that off my chest. You want to change the culture, the superstars need to step up, period. Okay. I can't put that any other way, that we haven't heard anything from the big dogs in the game. They're the ones that have the bully pulpit. They're the ones who don't even use their social media accounts because they don't want to deal with it and focus on hockey and just be robots and droids. And they have the opportunity to change things. So I know some of the players don't want to deal with it. I know it's just the way it is.
Yeah.
But I think you need to. I think you have a bigger devotion to the sport of hockey to clean this up. And it's not happening amongst the superstars.
Yeah.
But going back to your point about the players, like, I can remember sitting at a meeting in Dallas, an NHLPA meeting, and everybody's just staring at Don Fear talking to us. And I had questions, and I started to ask and started to talk. And like, okay, like I said, I was a minor league jobber, man, for the most part. But I felt like I was the only person in that room that cared or had any type of experience with these things, with negotiations, with PA discussions. And I'd hardly spent much time in the league compared to a lot of people in that room. And that to me was endemic of what's happening. The only thing that matters is escrow to the players and the next CBA. Everything else gets lost. And you just, do whatever you're told by your PA boss. And he's not your boss. He works for you. Don Fear works for you. So I know I'm passionate about this, Scott, because I've seen the level of apathy. And it's tough when players are young, because young players are impressionable. They listen to their parents. They listen to their agents. Yeah. They don't make their own decisions. They don't have that experience level.
Yeah. And it is, there are, like, we've already seen Jonathan Toews and Patrick Kane initial comments after Stan Bowman.
They were terrible. It was terrible. They couldn't have been worse. Like, literally, Toews' comments couldn't have been worse.
Patrick Kane tried to do a do-over after. At least I give him some credit for that. And I get it. I would, and I agree entirely with what you're saying. It would be great if there was a cavalcade of commentary from the game's best, most important players. But, here's my hat off to Patrice Bergeron in Boston, who, I'm trying to paraphrase it now, but I believe gathered the team so they could watch Kyle Beach's interview.
They all did together
with
Correct.
Rick
the whole team
Westhead.
watched together.
Why didn't that happen on 32 teams? Why wasn't that happening in every locker room, with every team, with every captain leading the way to say, wait a minute, we're going to take a moment and we're going to do this together. And that it didn't happen that way speaks to what you're speaking to. But thank goodness for Patrice Bergeron, who, just thank goodness for guys like him. So.
Yeah, Taylor Hall, Andrew Ladd, all have done a good job, the right thing with this from what I see.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, man, but like, how many of these things have to happen without anybody that's got some clout in the game saying something? Yeah. It just never happens. And everybody's afraid of being labeled an activist.
Yeah.
I mean, look at the way Robin Leonard's viewed by people. Oh, he just wants attention. No, he's trying to change this game. And you're seeing the reasons why, because all this crap that's been swept under the rugs coming out that he's been talking about, and people have sneered at it.
Yeah. Again, there's a guy, team gets beat 4-0 in Toronto. Things are not going great for Vegas, right? They're completely beat up. It's not a great situation there. Robin Leonard, again, thank you for understanding the big picture. Comes out and he talks to the reporters in Toronto after the game about some of the fallout, the ongoing story of what needs to be happened, what needs to be addressed in this league. And, because that's, again, that's not it's the right thing.
Yeah.
And good for him for doing it, after a difficult game. So, All right, let's talk some hockey here, my friend.
Let's do it.
3 stars of the week. I always like, and you and I talked about this before. It's great. I like the idea of the 3 stars of the week of the month, I guess. It's 3 stars of the month. But maybe some guys that are a little bit under the radar, but maybe star worthy.
Yeah, the stars of the month, Ovechkin, guy's potting goals left and right. He's climbing the list. He's going to break Gretzky's record. I mean, Connor McDavid, he had a great month. Really? Like, that's fantastic. Like, great job, Connor. Like, you're the man. We all know it. We know that you've been lucky enough to be selected to Team Canada, Connor, as you said last year in a press conference, which was the biggest eye roll I've ever done, ever. Like, dude, you're the best player on earth. It's okay to own that. You know what I mean? But those two, they're killing it. No surprise. And Freddie Anderson, now there's a surprise, Scott, to some people. I picked Freddie Anderson to have a bounce back season. I wasn't sure what the ceiling was. He's off to a great start, 7-0, 956 save percentage, but it's also his underlying statistics that he is bringing it. This isn't smoke and mirrors. He has given the Carolina Hurricanes the freedom to make plays and go up and down the ice and play with tempo and play hard because he's making saves. Yeah. And he looks like he's having fun. He's out of that pressure cooker in Toronto. I love Freddie Anderson's game. I think he's rock solid technically. And when he's in a good mental place, I think things are really strong for him. And, we do talk about the guys who don't get the recognition, the honorable mentions. Yes. And, you had a couple, when we were spitballing this back and forth, you had a couple of great ones. Tossing out David Perron. He just continues to produce. Like, this guy he's unreal, man. Like, and I skated with him the other day, huge smile, having fun, white skates, like, talk about unleashing a player. You bring him in the league at 18 years old and Andy Murray throws his white skates in the trash and says, you can't play with those. Like, you want to give a young guy confidence. Thanks, Andy Murray. Like, anyway, so like he just keeps going. He can't stop. But you also brought up Kyle Connor. And this guy is so much fun to watch. Like, his shootout move last night, just absolutely disgusting. And I think Kyle Connor really is maybe the most underappreciated goal scorer in the NHL. I think, in the past 5 seasons, he's 7th in the league in goals. And he's sandwiched between Nathan McKinnon and John Tavares. And nobody knows about this guy outside of like Canada, maybe. Like, he's been a 30-goal scorer. I think he scores 40 this year. Yeah. I'm going to make that prediction. He's been playing with Dubois. They've been a nice combination. Kyle Connor had 14 points in 8 games in November. Yep. 7 goals. Dubois got 11 points. Like, this looks like a great play, a great move to pick up Dubois now. Took a while last year. Yeah. But Kyle Connor, just like, what a release. I was talking to a player today. It said, yeah, he reminds me of Vladimir Tarasenko and how he shoots the puck. Really quick release, off the blade quickly. I agree. He's just so much fun to watch. Like,
it's so, and I defer to my son who watches a lot of hockey, and we co-manage a fantasy team, and Pierre Lebrun's, we've been in it for a long time. And trust me, I'm not the brains of the outfit, but I he made a comment last night because we were watching the game. He's away at college, but he's suggested that Kyle Connor might be one of the fastest players in the NHL outside of Connor McDavid. The ability to do things at such a high speed, which is so hard to defend. And I assume as a goaltender, so hard to defend when he's shooting. But we saw it again last night in that game. Dallas lucky to get a point out of that, frankly, the way they played. But that he can do so much at high speed. And you're right. I don't think people get, when I hear people talking about the U.S. Olympic team, and it'll be interesting because when we talk to Ryan Miller later, he is, of course, a role with Team USA headed to 2022 in Beijing. But people don't really talk about Kyle Connor. But to me, in that tournament against the big boys, and whether it's Canada or Russia, I think Finland's going to be really good there. Kyle Connor, I think, is going to play a significant role for Team USA. And I agree. I think he's one of those guys that people probably don't know outside of Winnipeg, really, just how good he is.
Under the radar, and I think there's other players around the league that kind of fit that mold. Honorable mentions from this past week. And one of the 2 defensemen for me, Kevin Shattenkirk in Anaheim. 11 points in 11 games, 6 on the power play. He had 15 points all last season. He's already almost at his point total from this year. I think a lot of that's just that team's re-energized. The young players, Troy Terry, Trevor Zegras, Isaac Lundstrom, they're starting to come along. And that's given Shattenkirk the confidence to do what he needs in the offensive zone on the power play. He can jump into play, be active like we'd seen previously in St. Louis and with Tampa Bay and with Washington. But Tony DeAngelo, I mean, Scott, you cover the Carolina Hurricanes. This is a guy who was brought in this summer, and it was not a popular move. There was baggage. There's no other way to say it.
Yeah, no, of course.
But he's come in, and the fans were chanting his name last week against the Blackhawks. Tony, and
Gordie Howe hat trick.
Gordie Howe Hattie. Is there anybody, and I mean, look at his stat totals. Okay, 9 points in 8 games. He's been fantastic on the power play. $1 million cap hit. Okay, Carolina looks great in this deal so far, as long as it doesn't go sideways.
Yeah.
But is there a greater endorsement of Rod Brind'Amour than what's going on with Tony DeAngelo right now in Carolina?
Yeah, well, and you're right. I mean, listen, we're a month in, so jury's still out, and it will be interesting to see. I love how that blue line's been constructed. You mentioned it. I provide content for the Carolina Hurricanes, so there you go. But I like the blue line there with Ian Cole. Ethan Bear has been really good there, and I think the sky's the limit for that young man. Tony DeAngelo. No one replaces Dougie Hamilton because Dougie Hamilton's a special player, but at $9 million, he didn't make sense for that team. And I think the way the team has been structured on the blue line, I think long-term, I think they may be in a better spot. And easy to say they're 8-0. So yeah. There you go.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I don't know. I had to go back and look. You didn't have Cole Caulfield as your Calder Trophy pick at the start of the season, did you?
Boy, I
don't know if you did.
I can't even remember. But man, that's not looking like the right pick, is it?
What when you found out that he was going to Laval in the American Hockey League? Listen, I know they're coming off a win over Detroit. As you and I are taping this, Mike, but in fact, they basically only beat Detroit. Team they can beat. Do you like
Detroit team that's missing Tyler Bertuzzi, their best player, because
that's a whole other story. Yeah. I don't get that part, but
Detroit has yet to win in Canada without their best player and Tyler Bertuzzi, who's unvaccinated and cannot travel to Canada and play. Anyway, carry on with Caulfield.
No iron team when it comes to Tyler Bertuzzi. But anyway, so I'm just curious. Do you like the move? Do you like because I get sometimes people see that. Well, are you punishing Cole Caulfield because he's not any good? Well, no, he's a great talent, and it truly is important. I think sometimes if you have a real finger on the pulse of where your player is going developmentally, in terms of maturity, in terms of what's the best thing for him, sometimes it is better to be playing at the American Hockey League level for a period of time. But what do you make of all that?
He's 20 years old, and he's hit a rough patch, and he needs to find confidence again. Yeah. And you can see it in his game. When I watch his clips, I see a player that's not getting open in the offensive zone. That's been his bread and butter his whole career. He's been able to find soft spots on the ice, get open, get shots to the net. That's not happening regularly this year. Yeah. And granted, the team hasn't been good, but Caulfield's not the type of player who can just make his own opportunities. He does need a wingman to get it going, and he needs defensemen that can get him the puck in motion. Caulfield hasn't had any rush. He's had one rush chance in 10 games. Okay. And if you watch last season in playoffs, especially when the Canadians moved deeper, when they beat the Golden Knights, turnovers they'd create, Caulfield, Suzuki, the other direction, it's in the back of the net to Foley. That's how they generated a lot. And it's not happening this season. So I think part of it's Caulfield just losing the confidence and knowing where to be in the offensive zone, but also he's not getting the type of help he needed to really get his feet underneath him and feel that success, to feel the puck on his stick, to really skate with it and feel like you're controlling the game. And at 20 years old, your head can spin so quickly. Sending him to the American Hockey League is a chance to let him reset. And you have to give him the right message when you do it. This is not a punishment. This is for you to go and dominate hockey games, Cole. Go have fun. Go get the puck on your stick. Have touches. Don't have pressure. Just go play. And I think if you're the Montreal Canadiens, you're hoping, hey, we won a game again, finally. Mike Hoffman's back in the lineup. He scored on the power play the other night. There's signs of life. It may not be consistent in Montreal, but it's going to get better. It has to get better. It can't get worse. Carey Price, by the way, we're hearing rumblings he may be coming back soon. Yeah. So I think the timing of this makes all the sense in the world. You let Cole Caulfield play for a week or two, maybe 4 or 5 games in the American League. You hope it goes well, which I would expect it would with his talent level. And then you bring him back and you see what happens. It's not going to hurt anything again. And it just comes down to messaging. You have to make sure he understands why this is happening and it's for the best in his long-term development.
Yeah. I'm curious. Do you have anything like, do you remember anybody that, similar kind of situation, young player comes down to a team you were playing on and where you could see, what, that worked, right? Like that made sense for, in that situation. Is there anything that comes to mind for you?
Well, I'm trying to think of a direct send down and recall example. And off the top of my head, I can't think of one in the moment, but what I can really remember distinctly was the 12-13 lockout season. Yeah. And you mentioned Ian Cole. He was on our team in Peoria. Yeah. And we never saw him again after the lockout ended in January. He was gone. But another player that was a rookie on that team was Jaden Schwartz.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And Jaden Schwartz did not start the year well in Peoria in the American Hockey League. Yeah. It was not going great for him. And he was a highly touted prospect out of college, all the skill in the world, fantastic guy, like loved playing with him. But it took him the better part of 2 months, really almost to Thanksgiving or so for it to click in pro hockey. And then we got to January and he started to go. You could see that confidence building. And then when he went to training camp in St. Louis, that week-long training camp coming out of a lockout, another guy, we never saw him again. His game just ramped up. Yeah. And I don't think that Jaden Schwartz, if he hadn't had that American League experience to start a season, would have had that. Yeah, I really don't. I think he would have been in over his head at the NHL level because he probably would have started there given where St. Louis was at that time in their development path. He would have been rushed. He would have been ahead. So I'm sure if I went back through my list, I could do this. But I think of even, Dennis Gurianov in Dallas. Here's a guy who was a healthy scratch for us in the 2018 Calder Cup playoffs. Huge gut punch. Did he take it that way? No, he kept working. Yeah. Took it the right way. Great attitude. He was explained why this is happening, what he needs to work on. Look at him now. Solid player in the National Hockey League. So there's a huge benefit to the American League. There's a huge benefit to letting players develop on time and arrive with some momentum and with some confidence.
Yeah, good stuff. When's it too early to worry? Or what's that old saying? It gets late early. Mm-hmm. We're in the second month. I know a lot of people point at American Thanksgiving as sort of, okay, the line in the sand. If you're not in it, then it's hard to get in it. But my sense is the second month of the season, you want to see some positive trends, I would think.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think, we're about to lose daylight savings time here or gain it. I can't even remember how this works in the United States. It's the goofiest thing on earth.
Fall back,
spring forward.
That's all I got for you.
Yeah, I'm not. Tell you what, meteorology would have been a fun career, but I didn't end up doing it. I really do think that by the 15 game mark, you're thinking, man, we got to get it together. And by the 20 game mark, that's your cutoff. And that really is about American Thanksgiving. Yeah. You look at recent trends, even the St. Louis Blues, when they won the Stanley Cup in 2019, I believe they were last in the league until Thanksgiving. And then it kind of carried into December, and then they started to go on a tear by January. And that was unprecedented. That just never happened. And they had to almost run the table to even make playoffs and do that. Yeah. So I think the watermark really is that 20 game threshold. And Scott, I think there's some teams that they got to get it going. I look at Boston. Man, they haven't played as many games. They're a little over 500, but that's not an easy division in the Atlantic right now. I mean, we don't think Buffalo's going to stick around, but can Detroit make a push? Toronto's going to be there. Yeah. I think Boston's got to get it going. Like, they're just not clicking right now. You look also at Dallas. Man, Dallas has been a target for us, thinking this team's way too good to underperform. They have way too much skill. They got 8 points in 9 games in a tough division where Colorado's trending up. Nashville's surprising people. Okay, Nashville's better than I expected. I didn't think they'd be where they are. I think those teams, to me, are Dallas really on the bubble.
31st in the NHL in goals per game. I'm with you on that. It isn't what we're talking about necessarily. And maybe next week, it'll be, and we're having Ryan Miller on in a few minutes, but Buffalo, I don't know. Can they stick around? Maybe that's a topic for next week. The team that I'm curious what you think of them, and maybe everything was colored by Vegas. I thought Seattle I thought they would be better. And that's a catch-all. I just thought they would be more competitive on a nightly basis. And there's a lot more ebb and flow to their game than I thought there might be. I know, Jonas Donskoy hasn't got a goal yet, and I thought he was going to be one of those critical players there. Calle Yarncroc, he's missed some time. He's only played in 5 games, but those guys have 0 goals between the two of them. And there's a lot more, pendulum swing in the crack game than I thought. Now, good thing for them is they're in the Pacific, so there's lots of there's lots of teams in state of flux there. But did you think we would have seen more from the Kraken at this stage, or are you more charitable than I?
I was pessimistic on them. I really thought that across the board, everybody was looking at expansion with rose-colored glasses because Vegas knocked the door down.
Yeah.
That's just my gut feeling, was that everybody thought, wow, look at Vegas. Seattle's going to capture that lightning in a bottle the same way. And when I look at their roster, it's not there. I thought that Vegas did such a good job in the expansion draft of leveraging it and getting quality players. And, Will Carlson, nobody could have expected that out of him.
Yeah.
But I mean, Jonathan Marchessault, Riley Smith, some of those guys that they brought in right off the bat weren't surprising if you'd ever played with them or watched them and know how they could carry the mail. And you just have to factor in the special dynamic of Vegas. I can't understate that enough, how special that year was, and melancholy. I can't stand referencing it nonstop, but it had so much to do with the mass shooting on October 1st that the whole city rallied around this team.
Yeah.
And I mean, Marc-Andre Fleury playing absolutely inspired hockey out of his mind, Gerard Gallant rallying the troops. And, I think that Gallant's has got a track record of that. He comes in, teams are going, he's doing it in New York right now, the same way.
Yeah. I
don't know that Dave Haxtell has that same fire to him that Gerard Gallant does. And that's why it raised my eyebrows when Haxtell got the job. Because I thought, if you want to come in and win games right away, do you want a teacher, or do you want somebody that's going to whip this team into shape and get them going and inspire them? And so I'm not placing this on Haxtell in any way. I'm just saying that was my gut. And I think that the talent it's not there across the board to carry this team. They have to have more than talent. They have to play impeccable systematic hockey, and they have to be inspired.
Yeah.
And when you lose that inspiration early in a season as an expansion team, it's easy to get complacent and just flow through the motions. And that's kind of what it looks like with them. It's going to be up and down as they go.
Yeah. A couple interesting signings this week as we get towards our visit with Ryan Miller in this episode of the Suitcase and the Scribe. And not really a surprise, I don't think, on either case. Morgan Riley, 8 years, $60 million total, 27 years old. And the one that I was curious to see how the Rangers would handle this along with Adam Fox and his group, but 23 years old, defending Norris Trophy champion winner, 7 years, $9.5 million. Man, if you were an elite defenseman, Mike, you would be so rich in the NHL these days. Does any of that surprise you? And I'm curious if there's, of those two that made news this week, whether you're like, this is, I'm more skeptical of this, or I like them both. What do you make?
I like the Fox deal better than the Riley deal.
Yeah. I
think the Adam Fox deal, this guy, him and Cale Makar are going to win the Norris Trophy for the next decade.
Yeah.
Just go back and forth. Okay. I'm not kidding. Like Victor Hedman, man, that guy's sick, but he can't do the things with the puck that these two guys can do. Yeah. Like, I don't see who challenges them. I mean, I think his deal at $9.5 million is actually pretty good value. I think that you lock him in 7 years at that rate is good for the Rangers. He could have been 10 plus. I mean, when you look at those comparables of Werenski, McAvoy, Jones, they're not the defenseman Adam Fox is. and they can't move the puck like he can. They can't control the play. They're not plus 22 in every league he's played in. They didn't go to Harvard and like there's a lot going on here. This guy's processing at a high level. Okay. I think it's a good deal for the Rangers. I really do. And I think part of it plays the fact that Adam Fox wanted to play for the Rangers.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So you got a win-win here, man. Like, this guy wants to be there. Give him the deal. Take the money. It's yours, dude. The Riley deal makes me nervous because there's trade protection. Yeah. It's until he's 36 years old when it finishes. I just feel like Kyle Dubas gave away too much power to the player in this deal. And at 8 years, that's a long time for an older defenseman. And again, he's not even 30, and we're saying this, but the Riley deal makes me nervous. The Fox deal makes me comfortable.
Yeah.
And that's what it comes down to.
Yeah. I'm interested in, I mean, you touch on it with the Adam Fox wanting to be in New York. He's always wanted to be a Ranger. So it is. And at 23, oh my God, like, he is special. He's absolutely a special player. And Morgan Riley's not that player, but in Toronto, it's a weird, as you know, it's a weird market. And sometimes it's hard, hard to get players to come there sometimes. I mean, John Tavares obviously made that choice.
Oh, ask Jake Gardner. Did he want to be there anymore? No chance. See you later.
Exactly. And I don't know Morgan Riley. I don't have a relationship with him. So, but from afar, it looks like he really wants to be there. And I think that's important with that team moving forward. And my sense is he's an important person in that room. But man, a team that's already really top heavy with contract and term and protection, I see your point entirely, that you've just added another layer to that. You've taken another, sort of element of flexibility away from Kyle Dubas. Maybe you never have to or want to use that flexibility, but it is what it is now. And now you're locked in.
Yeah. It makes me nervous. I think it could end up being a good deal for the Leafs. I do think it could be, but I don't think it's a slam dunk like Fox's. I think there is a little bit of hope on both sides. And your point about Riley is true. He wants to be there. Okay. This is a core piece to that team, and that's admirable. But man, trade protection through 2028, you're locked. That's tough. I want to go in a different direction here. We've talked about the players a lot. Scott, there's people around the National Hockey League that have these niche jobs that people may not know about, that they're so important to the game. Yeah. And I think of people like, I think a partner in Nashville. Partner's a longtime locker room assistant who's been there forever and beloved by everybody in the sport. And people like him that you may not hear a lot about, except for a cool story that you may write occasionally. And somebody that I think that you will be talking about soon is Dan Craig. And Dan Craig was the ice meister for the NHL for the better part of the last 25 years. Started making ice when he was 16 years old for arenas. Yep. And this is a guy who absolutely loved his job. It was his passion. And his calling card is going to be the Winter Classics, putting on these big shows, creating ice in situations that was very challenging. But I've walked into the Arizona arena in 110-degree heat, and we had decent ice. And I think a lot of that has to do with Dan Craig and what he did throughout the league to create the knowledge base of making good ice. Yeah. Scott, this is a guy who made the game better.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I was so pleased that you mentioned this, because I did talk to Dan Craig yesterday. He and I have known each other a long time, and we've crossed probably the first time. Well, I've crossed paths with him during playoffs, because he got hired by the NHL out of that, where for years they were credited with having the best ice.
Oh yeah,
without any doubt around.
Players were so amped to go to Edmonton because the ice was glass. Yeah, it wasn't like playing in Florida in March. But
yeah, well, and Dan got hired by the NHL to basically be quality control for the ice around the NHL, and then added to his portfolio was quality ice around the world. He did premier games, and he was telling a great story about the premier games in 2007 in London at the O2 Arena, which I happened to be at. A couple games in Japan, 3 Olympic games, and but you're right, the Winter Classic, doing the ice at that first Winter Classic. Well, he did the first outdoor game in Edmonton, which was more an Edmonton production, And then, of course, the Winter Classic that became really a hallmark of the NHL and really, I think, changed the league's profile in many ways, especially in the United States. And, putting that game on and then, the evolution of it, where the NHL ended up buying millions of dollars worth of portable ice making equipment because it said, if we're going to do this, and it was clear they wanted to, then we got to do it right. And it's Dan Craig. But it was funny when talking to him, and to your point, that it's not, yes, he's been on the greatest stages of the hockey world, but to know that there's good ice, or people in Arizona or Nashville or other places that learned the craft of making the ice and putting that on, that's a legacy for him too. And so he's retired. This is the whole point of talking about him. But the great thing about it is his son has taken over the rink.
Let me go 1 second here. In his words, he's not retired. Have you seen what he's using to describe this, Scott? What the word is?
I can't remember what the word. He didn't use it with me, maybe, but
he's graduating.
Oh, he's graduating. Well, I can also tell you, I can confirm that shortly, he lives outside of St. Paul, Minnesota. Shortly, there will be a backyard rink going in his community. The kids apparently in the neighborhood have already been asking him about it. So it's good stuff. So I'm glad and thank you for bringing it up. That's a good call by you. Listen, before we get to Ryan Miller and our conversation with one of the great goaltenders of this or any generation, I want to remind you that DoorDash is a proud sponsor of the Nation Network of podcasts, restaurants, and more delivered right to your door. And you sent me a note. I always like to get the DoorDash updates from you.
Yes, this week we had double sauteed pork. It was delicious. We had my mother-in-law in town for the past week. So DoorDash became our best friend for an evening. And once again, we went to our favorite China One just down the road. And the DoorDasher was here in less than 30 minutes. Had a lovely evening. And my kids drove my mother-in-law crazy. It's a great night, Scott.
Good stuff. All right. Let's get on with our chat with Ryan Miller then.
Ryan, when I reached out to you to come on and talk with us, I was kind of thinking about it. It's unbelievable that we've never talked face-to-face before. As long as the careers went, and I got stuck in the American League while you were doing your thing. But I always wanted to tell you this, that I actually looked up to you in a lot of ways, because coming from St. Louis, I was born in 83, you're an 80 birth year. I got to see you play for the Sault Ste. Marie Indians in the North American Hockey League. And I remember just thinking, like, man, this guy's really good. He's got sick style. You were wearing those Vaughn pads with the iceberg graphic back then. And then last season, you finished your career in that same setup by Vaughn once again. Yeah. And I just thought, man, it's unbelievable to think how this world has worked in parallels. Congrats on your career. Thanks so much for joining us, man. I'm so enthused to do so. What's been new for you since you finished up your career last season with Anaheim?
It is funny you mentioned the pads. It was very intentional to end my career the way it started. I just wanted to go back to something familiar and show the kids they still had some style. But no, not much has been new, man. Just trying to spend more time with the family, take the kid to school every day, spend time. I do have a few other things I'm trying to get on the go, because I think, like any competitive person, you can't be idle for too long. So I'm trying to find some stuff that I can, put in the mix where I feel like I'm working towards something.
I'm curious, Ryan, has it been different than you thought? I mean, you knew this day was going to come. You finish up 391 wins, 14th all time. I've done a little research here this morning. 796 NHL games. Just it's an outstanding body of work. But when you stop that routine, has it been different than you thought, or have you enjoyed it more than you thought? I'm curious to see what it's been like for you.
Well, I definitely think at this time in the world, things were so different in the last year and a half, 2 years with the pandemic. I think my wife and I, we've had some things pop up, like our 10-year wedding anniversary. I turned 40. ended my career, like all these things where we had talked in years past, like, hey, when these things happen, we are going to mark them and do something, either a trip or plan something with other people. And we've not done one thing. So it's a little anticlimactic in that sense, but as far as being around family and stuff, it's been about as I expected, and it's been needed. I think that anytime you talk to a hockey player and how much time you spend, focus on hockey, I think looking back on it and even just thinking about getting into the routine, I know I made a good decision, because I'm just thinking about just driving to practice right now. And I'm just like, no, I can't do it. It's just, that's how much time you just have spent locked into something. So I think my wife, Noreen, would probably say, I need to work out more, because I have so much of that energy pent up, and it starts to get, a little dark, but I think I'm doing all right. I've been trying to, just make sure, the family's taken care of, things are done around the house, and I'm paying attention to hockey, because I do have at least a part-time gig until the winters. I'm coaching with the Olympic team. So I'm paying attention to all the games I can, watching some video. I'm trying to get to some in-person games now that the season's kind of has more of a flow to it. I can really get a look at a guy in net, and when the camera comes off him, I want to be watching to see how, where his shoulders are at, where his head's at, like just watching the body posture. So I'm starting to get into that mode. So it's been fun.
I can really empathize with you here, because I'm thinking about when I finished, I had to fill space and time, and I haven't been working out enough. I know that. I skated the other day with the Blues in practice and just went, oh God, like I'm so sore. I don't know if I could do this. It's been a year and a half.
You threw the pads on?
I did. Yeah. Well, I missed it, and Scott, you rattled off some of Ryan's accomplishments, and there's one there that I think is the coolest thing, is that you're the winningest American goaltender in NHL history. That's an unbelievable accomplishment. And I'm the winningest American League goaltender. Like, you don't get many awards for that, but
that's a great accomplishment too. That's something where you won some hockey games. So that's always fun, right?
It is. And I look at your career though, and we'll get more into the USA hockey stuff in a little bit here. But I played with your brother Drew in Portland years ago in the American League. And I can remember asking him, this was 2007 or so. And I thought, man, your brother, and then speaking of you, of course, Ryan, I thought, he crushed it at Michigan State. He won a Hobie Baker. His numbers were ridiculous. And then spent the better part of 3 seasons in the American League and crushed it in the American League. And the one year was the lockout year in 2004-05. So that was a little different. Yeah. But I remember asking him, like, did Ryan ever get frustrated with the process that Buffalo wasn't giving him the chance early enough, even though he probably deserved it? And I'd like to pose that same question to you. Do you think that at that time you're able to look at it with a really clear lens building towards something?
Yeah. I mean, that's how I took it. I mean, I think anyone who's young, they always look at the timelines for things, and they get really frustrated when things don't happen sooner than later. I think as you get a little bit older, you have a respect for the process and how timelines can be a little bit longer, and it's not the end of the world. There's actually a benefit to it. I think that there are a lot of examples in the National Hockey League, now where there should be more of a process. There's a lot of learning going on in the NHL these days because of the salary cap situation. But Buffalo had its own restrictions. It was, when I came to Buffalo, they were a team that was transitioning ownership because of illegal activity. The family that owned the Sabres were caught up in a huge scandal. I think that there's a lot of, I can't remember the exact details, but there's a fair amount of jail time handed out. And so we were pretty much operated by the league, and the money was, being doled out by the NHL, like literally. Like, I remember getting one of my signing bonus checks as a handwritten check. I thought I was getting sent down in one of my short stints, and Darcy Regier called me into his office, and it was like, and they had missed the signing bonus date by like weeks. And I had gotten called up during that time. And I don't even remember, like, my agent and I had talked about, Mike Lee was my agent. I just remember talking to him, and he was like, they're having a lot of issues, so we're probably not going to make a big deal of this, but you are owed a signing bonus. if you happen to see Darcy, why don't you bring it up? But he actually just called me in his office, and it was during a stretch. I thought I was getting sent down for sure. And he called me and handed me an envelope with a check, and it's handwritten. I was just like, what am I going to do with this? But it was because, in that time, that was what was going on. But, Darcy also had a plan because, based a little bit on the salary and money restraints, he couldn't chase after certain players, and he had a deep belief of growing everything from the inside. It's almost a necessity for him. So I understood the message, and it actually benefited our group. Our group that came up through Rochester and ended up graduating to the NHL together after that lockout season, we were dialed in, we were ready, and our egos were in the right place. We played for each other really, I feel, in a way I haven't seen since. And it was really special kind of feeling to have that bond with, 7, 8 guys. And I didn't feel like I was, put into a situation where I wasn't being respected. It was still at a time I feel like I didn't earn anything. I did well in a different level of hockey. It wasn't like I was killing it in the NHL and then I was getting buried. I hadn't made it yet. So my sole purpose was to make it. That's where the lockout year was actually beneficial. We were playing at the highest level of hockey available in the world at the time in the American League. And we were all very focused on making the next step.
Yeah. Ryan, I was busy pumping your tires. I'm not sure if I mentioned, silver medal, 2010 Olympics, which is a great segue to your new role with USA Hockey and the team in 2022 in Beijing. But I'm going to ask you quickly about 2010. And you talk about the bond you had with those guys that came up with you through the AHL and into that, the first really important season after the lockout, went to an East final. Is that something similar with that 2010 Olympic team? It's legendary. I'll admit my own bias. I was there for the tournament, covered it all. I've never had a more electric moment than during that gold medal game. I think about it as I'll never be part of an event like that again and a game like that again. And I wonder if there is some carryover, for you in that group from 2010, if you cross paths with whether it's the coaching staff or players, is there something that stands the test of time with that team?
Yeah, I mean, anytime you see the guys from that team, it's a smile on the face. It's a hug with the handshake, and it's good to catch up. It was a lot of similarities in that team with the Buffalo team. It's like a little bit unexpected. Yeah. A group that came together quickly and had a good positive attitude, and it wasn't about anything other than coming together as a group and trying to accomplish something. There was no hang-ups. It was just, we have a job to do, and we have a chance to prove ourselves, and a young, hungry group mixed with a good group of veterans. And I thought it was a great experience. It is bittersweet, and I've said this numerous times, is that I'm immensely proud of what we did, but it's also hard. You're a shot away, you're into overtime, you're very close, and you don't get rewarded for that. It's really tough. I know that the guys all kind of feel the same way. I got to spend a lot more time with David Backus, and not that I haven't talked to other guys about this, but we spent a lot of time together in Anaheim, and during the pandemic, it was a lot of hotel room time where we're just sitting around in the common areas. And one thing, some other players brought up, they asked about it, that was an awesome experience. What do you guys remember? And we were just kind of going over it, and oh yeah, you got the medal. What'd you guys do with it? And we both were at certain points, both of us were well, it's in our sock drawer, because it's you're super proud of the accomplishment. The jersey's hanging in my hallway, and but it's the medal is I have a safe now where things are kind of there, but it's it's a great accomplishment. I love all the guys. it's just really hard to accept that we came that close and it wasn't a victory. So it's bittersweet. You know?
So, I don't want to trot on you, Mike, but it's a natural follow-up for me then. When you get the opportunity to help with the coaching staff led by Mike Sullivan, John Hines is on it, Todd Reardon, what do you think your experience in Vancouver and all that entailed, how do you think that will be brought to bear with your role in putting together this team in 2022? And I get, I'm biased. I can't wait for this tournament. I mean, so many young players who haven't had this opportunity before, and Connor McDavid, Austin Matthews, go down the list. What's that going to be like for you, and how much will you draw on Vancouver, if at all, in doing that job?
Well, I'm going to draw on all my experiences for sure. I think the thing that stood out for me is having a chance to sit down with the staff in August. We were trying to figure out, how do we communicate messages, what's going to be important to these players. And I thought that this interesting, thought I had that I wanted to share was like, this group is not inexperienced. We have a ton of players who have, won under 18 World Junior titles, but they have not had the pleasure of playing at the highest level of international competition, which we consider the Olympics. The World Cup events, we haven't had them, as much. The last time we had anything for some of these young players, they were playing in the North American, team, the Young Stars kind of thing, and it was a quick tournament. It's a little bit, it's a great event for hockey, but compared to the Olympics, it's just a different animal, I think. And for these kids to, not kids anymore, young men, to have a chance to compete at the highest level now, it's different. I don't think we should go in feeling like we're anything other than a leader in the international stage for USA Hockey. And it's a great opportunity for this group to prove something. It was kind of my idea. Because when you think about it, they've done everything. Like, a lot of these kids have won everything, except they have not had the chance to do this. So it's really about embracing the opportunity on the biggest stage and doing something different. I firm believer that hockey is a game that's meant to be played as a Challenge Cup kind of format. You can play a season, you can play for the Stanley Cup. It's the greatest challenge you can have in hockey. But I love that you mix in other tournaments. It's really with, the tradition of hockey is you have those challenge opportunities. You play tournaments, you have different kind of qualifiers, floor tournaments. I just think it's great. So this is a great opportunity for them.
I look at what you described previously of how now you're watching the game. You're not playing in it. You're having to analyze, and you spoke very specifically about how you watch goaltenders. And
Mm-hmm.
I've kind of got two parts to this, but one of them is now how you watch the game differently. Like, for me, becoming an analyst, I had to stop watching just the goalie and watch everything and try to take it in. But I also, aside from the USA Hockey role, aside from taking a look at everything that's happening, you played goaltender. We both did during an era where everything changed from a technical standpoint. I mean, everything. And I don't think people really understand what it took for you to have the success that you did starting your career in 2002 in the NHL, clear through 2021. If you can just distill down what it took to keep your game current, to be able to have success in the NHL, some of those technical details were just so different. I mean, how did you find the mental capacity and the desire and the drive to continue to evolve as you got older?
Yeah, good question. I think that goaltending has changed so much in the last, couple of years, let alone the last 20 years. There's a lot of emphasis put on challenging the shooter, taking angles away. Your defense would kind of, fall in around you. And you weren't being asked to take up the backside of the play, or if a play was below the net, if, guys weren't thinking about hanging around certain areas. The penalties are a little bit different, but referee awareness, players adapting to certain things. But as we came out of that lockout, like we talked about earlier, the emphasis was put on speed. And I think the speed was all kind of downhill through the neutral zone. And the hooking was getting called a lot. So there's a lot of guys, it wasn't always 2-on-1s, but you're getting a lot of 3-on-2s. But we saw the evolution of how, teams started figuring out 3-on-2s. The defense are, gapping over on those two guys on the one side. They're doing a squeeze play. It's something that's really common now. So it ends up being like 3-on-2s aren't as dangerous anymore. So what can we do next? It's just interesting watching the evolution of offense. But yeah, being responsible for the backside, the way power plays have changed. You're having to, play your post a little bit differently. I think the post work is the biggest thing for goaltender. Mm-hmm. Your reverse VH is when you're leaning in with one knee down. And when I was younger, it was you kept your knee closest to the post was up. You bent your knee inward, and you're creating a wall towards the one side, but you have your leading knee, and it's just amazing to see how somebody figured out. Well, that creates a lot of overextending yourself. You're off balance a lot. You can't rotate off that very well to the backside. So we were trying to figure that out. I remember working with Jonas Enroth, who was in Sweden, where I feel like they really were way ahead of things as far as post play over there. And they were trying to integrate that to all their players. And I started noticing he was doing this thing at the end of practice. And he was explaining they were trying to put it into practice in his training over there. And you saw a lot of Swedish, Finnish goalies starting to play on their knees more. I think Jonathan Quick just kind of naturally did it. It was something that it was part of his game. He's so explosive, and he wanted to be low and spread out to the ice. He ended up in that position a lot. But then I think you saw a lot of the European goaltenders doing that. And I was picking up on it, and we made a point of working on it in practice, trying to integrate that reverse and when to use it. And I just remember getting burned so many times because you'd enter it, and then, guys had you're thinking, oh, I got this covered off, and you have to learn kind of as you go, where is the smart time to use it and when it's not to use it. So it was fun to figure out, but I guess, that's one example. There's probably many more where that was how you would do it, and just find areas of the game and what's happening on a night-to-night basis, like what's happening that's is becoming more of a consistent pattern, and looking for those things.
Yeah. So that's great stuff.
We could go forever with this, Scott. I mean, is it the goalie nerd? We got a whole nother podcast to do with the goalie nerd stuff.
I love it when goalies get together and they lapse into that. They have that there's it's a goalie thing. Huh?
It's a different world.
I mean, everything Ryan said, I went through the same thing. I saw Sergei Bobrovsky do it in 2013, and I went, "Oh my God, my career's over if I can't do this." Like this is real. Like, and that was the course, and there's all these moments, Scott, where you unlock things as a goaltender.
Those guys ruined it for us, really, though, because they proved that you could cover the backside. Exactly. It used to be like, oh, that guy just tapped it in the back door. Yeah, nothing you could do on that, bud. Tap you on the pads.
Yeah. Now you're responsible for everything.
Wait, that guy's catching up to a lot more of those than is normal. Well, now it's normal. So yeah, you do have to pay attention to the league around you. And that's where being a fan of the game has always been, beneficial to a player. You have to enjoy hockey. You have to watch it. You have to absorb it. And I think that's why I was able to, move with the times. I like to watch hockey, and that's part of like what I would do. I would watch every single game I could. So I wanted to know the tendencies of the guys. We didn't have the video we have now. I had to just pay attention in real time. Like, I wanted to watch hockey games, see what guys are doing, what moves they made on breakaways, what the power play looked like. We didn't have the database. The guys have database now. You just pull it up, and it's like, you need to see, 50 power plays that are run by, Nathan McKinnon. Here you go. You're probably going to get a bomb going blocker high, or you're going to get a step inside, missile. But at least you can see it and know what's going on. Before, it was almost like you just heard the whispers of, guys around the league. This guy's got a bomb. Watch out on the wing. That's about it.
Now you've got an iPad on the bench you can go to.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, things are moving fast now. Technology and the awareness, things moving fast. It's fun to see, where the game can go.
All right. We're going to let you go, but I will ask one final question. This experience with USA Hockey, and it strikes me as sort of dipping your toe into something, but I mean, your peers, I think of Chris Drury as new GM in New York with the Rangers, of course, Danny Briere, he and I chat periodically, and he's done a bunch of different things on the executive side. Do you have a sense yet? Is that something that appeals to you, whether it's, something like that, or more on the hockey ops coaching side? Do you have a sense of it yet?
Yeah, this is definitely a toe dip. I feel like I have, the competitive spirit inside me. So I want to be in a position to have an influence on winning. So I don't know. I'll see where that goes, but I think I do have a feel that, being more of an executive management kind of vibe would be a lot of fun for me. I like the idea of building, because I feel like I had to build my career. There's other things I did in my career that I feel like, I went outside and I approached the physical side, the mental side, the hockey side, the life balance side. I tried to touch on all these things. I feel like I just have a lot of time spent thinking about things that would be important to building a team, and I'd like to get them all out. Have to use them. I don't want to have all this information kind of just stored up, and I want to use the information. I want to stay competitive, and I definitely look at like Chris Drury and Danny, and even Roberto Luongo and guys who are a little bit older and had a great experience in the NHL, are able to redirect their hockey knowledge. And I love the fact that goaltending is getting a lot more respect, and that there are goaltending departments now where the focus is on development. Because in my very quick journalism, I look back over just my lifetime, and a majority of the Stanley Cups are won by goalies, in-house guys who start their career with a team. And I just think so much emphasis has been put on just trying to find a goalie, and it gets kind of underappreciated that a vast majority of the cups are won by guys who have built the trust with the organization, formed a bond with their team, and are able to go out there with a different kind of energy, I feel like, somehow. And, that's how they were able to do it. So I like the direction that's going. And, if that's something I can help with or get into more of a team standpoint, I'm going to do the work I need to do the next couple of years, and also enjoy some family time and go from there.
I think that's a big reason why I wanted to have you on, because again, I started this off by saying I looked up to you, and I still do in a lot of ways, because I knew all along, hearing, like you said, the whispers, but throughout hockey, how you approached everything was such, like a well-rounded mindset. It wasn't just goaltending. And I know that that's what carried your career for so long and with so much success, and inspired me and other goaltenders. And I tell you what, I think that USA Hockey's done a smart thing to bring you in, because you do have a ton to offer. And aside from being the winningest American goaltender of all time, hopefully, as a fellow American, we can bring home some hardware here. And you're a big part of that. So on behalf of Scott and myself, thanks so much for joining us today. This was really enlightening. And I know we could have gone on for hours talking goaltender. So thanks for keeping it concise on my selfish questions.
Yeah, no problem. Well, let me know if you want to do it again. We can sort out all the world's problems.
All right. Thanks very much, Ryan. It's great to catch up. Mike, all kinds of credit to you for lining up Ryan Miller. And you we could literally have talked for hours to Ryan Miller. So thanks for doing that. That was great.
Oh man. That was a selfish play on my part, because we never spoken face to face, even through Zoom, never face to face. We tap pads at the red line. We've exchanged emails over the year, mostly relating to equipment rules and changes and things that we were brewing throughout the National Hockey League, and how we were going to somehow find ways to skirt those rules, or maybe just find gray areas. But what a great conversation. And Scott, you can really see that Ryan Miller is somebody that, if he chooses, could without question be very successful in management in hockey.
No question. No question at all. Well, it's good. Good work by you all around, my friend. How about we do this next week? I can't wait.
I like
already.
how that sounds. Yeah, I'll make sure I get a DoorDash ordered in the next week, and off we go.
All right. Sounds great. Good job, my friend.
You too.
Thanks for listening to The Suitcase and The Scribe, a member of the Nation Network of Podcasts and delivered by DoorDash. Make sure you hit the subscribe button to never miss an episode.